Hail and much love to you, BookTube. This is a Talk Swap video. Today we're going to talk about a non-fiction book. I don't do many, but I did one just a little while ago, and then it got me thinking about this one. This is called Generations, The History of America's Future, from 1584 to 2069. Is by William Strauss and Neil Howe. It came out, I want to say 1991, some time ago. I read it not then, but later when they came out with the follow-up book, The 13th Generation, which is all about me, Generation X. I also read the Generation X book. I'm weird in that I get my news from, filtered through the lens of stand-up comedians. And one of the generations, or one of the people that comedians still feel empowered to pick on is our seniors, our elders. And, as someone who embraced the ethos of the village that received me in Africa, I must respect my elders. And I always find it funny. I am of the view to pick on, just about anybody in a humanistic way. And we are all these, at some point, bloated balloons of ego that could do with a pin pop. I think, however, I don't like it when it's lazy, and that's usually when it gets offensive. And this isn't offensive, but I just think it's lazy. The number one joke that I hear over and over and over and over, oh, grandma said something racist, grandpa said something racist. And I was thinking about it the other day. It's like, well, my mom's 80 something. I should know. I should know it. She's 142, so you can do the math. She's in her 80s, so she is, I guess, the grandma now, right? Although I did not give her progeny, grandma age. And she was a beatnik before there even were hippies. And the hippies went to India and brought back the music and the transcendental meditation. And I find it so sad that there was a sincere young person who didn't know if they could practice meditation because it might be cultural appropriation. Oh heavens, I need a whole video on that. Anyway, these many of these are elders that we're making fun of as racist are the ones who marched for civil rights. So let's just bear that in mind. Anyway, it got me thinking about generations, and I really enjoyed reading this book. It's a sort of sweeping history. Most of the criticisms that it got were the kind of criticisms that are for the book that it wasn't. You know what I mean? When people write these straw man and they try to criticize, what they would have liked the book to have, or they make exaggerated claims for the book. I think that Strauss and Howe keep their observations, I would say, descriptive instead of prescriptive, and therefore, and like all social sciences, needn't be sort of falsifiable and all that empirical stuff, as I talked about in my last nonfiction review. So anyway, it's a fun book. They also came out afterwards with one about millennials rising, I want to say, and maybe one more. This is the one that sort of sets the pattern. So let me tell you a little bit about the pattern here. So we've got generations coming in groups of 4, okay? There's the idealists, the reactives, which Gen X is, the civic, and the adaptive. I'm aware that they've changed the names of all these and gotten a little more Joseph Campbell hero journey with it, and archetypes and all that, but I'm going to stick to what they talked about in Generations back in the 90s. Okay, so now the idealists, and the reactives, they're going to experience a spiritual awakening followed by a secular crisis. The idealists will have that will live through that spiritual awakening in society in their rising adulthood, and the reactives will have that spiritual awakening in their youth. The idealists will have that secular crisis as elders, and the reactives will have that secular crisis in their middle age years. Now the civic and adaptive is sort of the reverse, right? They have a secular crisis followed by a spiritual awakening. The civic will have the secular crisis in the rising adulthood, which I guess is me now, and their spiritual awakening as elders, so I'm looking forward to that. The adaptives will have that spiritual crisis, secular crisis as youth, and the spiritual awakening in their middle years. Okay, so I won't, I love to go into influences, but I won't spend too much time on that because I've got a lot to cover here. But they, they draw on sociology going back to Comte. They draw on history, obviously Schlesinger is a favorite. They've got some other voices such as Ortega y Gasset in Fatutu and, a lot of different sources. So that would be my first question for TALK SWOP. What sources do you think these scholars ignored at their peril or perhaps over-depended upon? All right, so the anxiety of influence, as Harold Bloom calls it. So now, the reason that we're the 13th generation, Generation X, is because there's going to be five sets of these four in American history in this book. There's going to be the colonial era. It's going to have the Puritans, the Cavaliers, the Glorious, and the Enlighteners. You're going to have the Revolutionary era. It's going to have the Awakening, the Liberty generation, Republicans, and Compromisers. That's not Republicans like the party today. That's Republicans as in they favor the Republican form of government as opposed to monarchy. Then you have the Civil War set. That's going to be the Transcendentalists, the Gilded, skipping one, and then the Progressives. We'll come back to that skip in a minute. Then there's the Great Power Four. You got the Missionaries, the Lost, the GI, which sometimes called the Greatest Generation, the Silent Generation. And finally, the fifth is us. The Millennial Four is Boomers, 13ers, Generation X. The Millennials, Gen Z, whatever you want to call them. And this fourth, they had not even named at that time. Later on, they're going to call them Homeland Generation, I think. But I haven't read about that, so I can't tell you anything about it. So I was born in 1971, so right in the middle of the 13th generation, which is from 1961 to 1981. All right, what else can I tell you about this? Yes, the crises and the, so first of all, one of my questions would be, what do we think about this division of 5 sets of 4? Does it seem to make sense? Secondly, what about that skipped one? Is this a weakness in their totalizing vision? To be honest with you, I prefer when I have scholars setting up these giant systems, when they note anomalies. It shows that, to me, that they're not glossing over anything. And they even offer some speculative assumptions about why this might have been due to the Civil War and everyone dying, things of that nature. But also some dates. I'm not gonna give you too many dates because, we'll get lost. But I'll just tell you this. So there's those series of awakenings, spiritual awakenings, secular crises, right? Let me give you those, and that's the last little set of data, and then we'll have some fun with it. So this is quite interesting. So starting before the Puritans, okay, we've got the Reformation, which is in the 1520s, plus 49 years is the Spanish Armada, and that's in 1588, and that's the Awakening plus the spiritual secular crisis, right? So from the Spanish Armada, it's plus 52 to the Puritans, around 1630s. Then it's another plus 52 years to the Glorious Revolution of 1688. 52, plus 51 years brings us to the Great Awakening in the 1740s. People who don't study religion don't necessarily seem to know, history people don't seem to know much about the Great Awakening. It was like a big revival of religion. Now this is plus 46 years from then, so a little down from our 52, 51. Then we have the American Revolution, so 1789, and then it's going to be plus 48. So you can see we're really in a group set of time periods between these awakenings and crises. So I think it's impressive, and it's also not too exact. But now we're about to run into our first problem. So for 48 years from the American Revolution, we have the Transcendentalists, right? Now from the Transcendentalists, it's only plus 28. And lo and behold, that coincides to that missing civic generation in the Civil War set of four. So after the Gilded and between the Gilded and the Progressive. So then you have the Civil War of the 1860s, plus 38. You get a little faster here at the end. Then you have the Missionary Era, which is not a historical category I've heard talked about much, but that's how they name it. And I'd love to know what you think about. I think the other named periods are not controversial. For most of us who read a lot of history, we'll agree with most of them. But tell me what you think of the Missionary Era label. And that's plus 42, so we're back up again to the 40s, to the Great Depression, World War II, so 1930s, and then we don't know what's next as we move into the modern era. So that's sort of the setup. You can see how it works. Just 50 years, more or less, in between these crises, awakenings, in sets of four. And I thought what would be fun to do, since this is BookTube, is I would tell you about the cultural endowments, as Strauss and Howe call them, which are the books and authors for each generation. So we'll start off with our Puritans. Here, this is the time of On Plymouth Plantation, the Algonquin Bible, the 10th Muse, by Anne Bradstreet. Then we've got the Cavaliers. Listen to this, what a time to be alive. Day of Doom, Danger of Speedy Degeneracy, and my personal favorite, oh, they had entertainment, the entertaining passages of King Philip's War. Oh, very nice. King Philip is the anglicized name of the Pocketok, no, don't quote me, one of the native groups, I believe, of the Connecticut area. Monacute, I can't remember his real name. So then we have the Glorious era. You've got the rulers feeding and guiding their people. Essays to do good old Cotton Mather. Then the Enlightenment, reasonableness of singing, lovely. Flora Virginica. Ministers are men of like passion with others. Whoa, spicy. All right, so that's our first set of four. Now, we're getting into the Revolutionary era. So we have the Awakeners, the Spiritual Travels of Nat Cole, or Rick's Almanac, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, of course, all that good stuff. We have our Liberty era, Common Sense, Letters from a Farmer, and my personal favorite, Battle of the Kegs. And they give lots of statistics about how this generation drank way more than any previous generation. They love to drink, this generation. They give little snippets about the history of each era. So next we have our Republicans. These works of literature at that time are Columbiad, The Conquering of Canaan, The Federalist Papers, and this was fun, Modern Chivalry. Also interestingly, there was a growth spurt in this area. Everyone popped up like half inch, doesn't sound like much, but it was a lot very fast. The most until the GI generation. And so they were, our good old Yank Minutemen fighting those Brits. Redcoats were almost 2 inches taller on average than the Brits. So next we have the Compromisers, which is our era of Legend of Sleepy Hollow, the Leather Stocking Tales, and a fun one called Married or Single. Apparently this is the birth of the romance novels in the States. This is, they're really into their romance novels of this generation. Next, in the Civil War era, we have the Transcendentalists. Of course, famous Transcendentalists, Leaves of Grass, the Poetry of Poe, the Scarlet Letter, Book of Mormon, and the Encyclopedia Americana. Followed by the Gilded Era, we got the rise of Silas Lampa, Carnegie's Gospel of Wealth, Alger's Luck and Pluck. Belying all of this wealth, and of course, Twain, coined the term Gilded Age. This is the birth of gangs. The gangs began in this time because it was the end of apprenticeships. There were no more apprenticeships. So this gave rise to the birth of the gangs at this time. Then the progressive era, we have Uncle Remus, Rough Riders, Portrait of a Lady, Babes in Toyland, and check this one out, How to Be Plump. The beauty standard at that time would be kind to a person of my fortitude. Next, the great power generations. We have the missionaries, Sister Carrie, Martin Eden, that commie Jack London that everyone thinks just writes about dogs. The octopus, this is the muckraker era, right? Red Badge of Courage, Magnificent Ambersons. Interestingly, this is the generation that created Social Security, but they didn't collect like a 5% or 10%, I think 5%, collected any Social Security at all, and they just paid into it and set it all up for us. Very nice. Okay, lost generation. We got the wasteland, right? Famously, or infamously, I should say. Sound and Fury, Babbitt, Sinclair Lewis should be read more nowadays. Gatsby, The Old Man of the Sea, The View from 80. These were the guys who suffered the flu epidemic, but also suicide. Suicide doubled during this time, risk of suicide. No, increased by 50%, sorry. Increased by 50% the incidence of suicide at this time for these lost generations. GI generation, the greatest generation, Grapes of Wrath, Roots, Feminine Mystique. Some of that's fun with some of these is to see, some groupings are really like a theme, and then some like are contemporaries that you wouldn't have thought, oh, those people were contemporary, that's interesting. Silent generation is Poor Noise Complaint, Heartburn, Future Shock, Michael Harrington's The Other America, so definitely you should read if you haven't. Then, of course, we get into our era, contemporary era, the Boomers, got All the President's Men, Color Purple, Doonesbury, they list. And a fun tidbit about this period, this is the nadir of a 17-year slide in SAT scores. So, which I don't put any faith in at all, but as we're performing more poorly on tests, grade inflation is out of control. This is where it all started. The average grade went from C to a B. That's probably to an A, I'm sure now, and the average. And the percentage of people claiming that they had straight A's jumped to 11%. Good on you, if that's true. If it's true. All right, so that's interesting for that. And then my generation, 13ers, Less Than Zero, Liar's Poker, Motherless Brooklyn, Cocaine Kids. It's not good, is it? We are the most aborted generation and the most incarcerated generation. And I wanted to read you this. I'm only going to give one quote from this book. And it's all I need to tell you about my generation if you still have doubts. During the 13er childhood era, America had substantially shifted the federal fiscal burden from the old to the young. Since 1972, older generations have deferred paying for some $2 trillion in current consumption through additional U.S. Treasury debt, a policy 5 times more expensive in lifetime interest costs for the average 15-year-old like me than for the average 65-year-old like our parents. Federal tax policy shifted in the same direction. 1990, according to House Ways and Means, a young 13er couple with a worker baby, $30,000 in wages, had to pay 5 times as much in taxes, over $5,000, as a typical retired GI couple with the same income from private and public pensions, $1,073 taxes. So that's the story basically of Gen X. I thought I might do a video on Gen X, Coppoland's Gen X. I read it and I thought it was fun, but I think I'm satisfied with what I have said here about this all. All right, so let's see, did I miss anything that I wanted to cover? So my questions are about the themes, the groupings, the missed generation. It said that in the summer of 1861, they had no senators, 1 governor, and 2 representatives, congresspersons. which was the historical nadir for political influence for 7-year-olds. So there's also this compromiser loss of leadership leading into the Civil War, obviously massive casualties, and this sort of missing generation. Do you think it discredits the whole system, or do you think that they can adequately explain it away? And I think that's everything I want to say about that. Let me tell you now about TALK SWOP. So TALK SWOP is something that we do where if you've read a book, you go and find one of us TALK SWOP video people, and in our talks we'll have themes and observations of our own that we put forward, and we'll have some questions, also open questions, and you can respond to our open questions, also critique our presentations, our ideas about them, and you'll just leave a link to your video in the comment section, not only of, say, you started with me, but with anyone else who's, hopefully to be a group of us, who's also written on the same, as you watch each of their videos about, in this case, generations, then you just add your video to their comments. And this hopefully is going to create a large enough sort of reservoir of buzz around a book that when people go to search, it won't be necessary to have like a famous influencer or anything like that. We'll have, as a group, an interesting discussion, which will include all kinds of hopefully diverse viewpoints from different countries and all kinds of things, generations, that will hopefully show up in people's feed when they search for that book. And so this will attract, I hope, a lot of traffic to BookTube. So that's the idea of TALK SWOP. I hope you're excited about it as I am. And make your video if you've read this book and link it in the comments. Thank you. And whatever generation you are, we love.